Rakugo is different from a lot of other art forms. For example, a musician, they want everyone to look at you, look at the star. But in Rakugo, I would explain it as a comical one-man theater. If you do it good, the storyteller becomes invisible and you just see the characters. There's a lot of human emotions, jealousy and greed, very universal themes. Then when the story is done, you return and like, oh, I was watching Rakugo.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Sanyutei Kouseinen. You're a professional rakugo performer here in Japan, from Sweden originally. And a few weeks ago, we had the opportunity to talk with Katsura Sunshine, who's one of your peers, but with a very different style from a different background. So it's going to be interesting today to be able to compare both and have another insight into the world of rakugo. But first, I want to know a little bit more about yourself and what brought you to Japan in the first place?
Well, a common answer, I think. When I was little, I watched Japanese anime and played the Japanese video games, like the Nintendo Entertainment System, and thus I have like a small connection to Japan. And then when I was studying in high school, university, I, need to study something, and I thought, hey, language is fun. Let's study Japanese. With no real proper goal in mind, but I thought, hey, it sounds interesting and it's something new, exotic almost. So I decided to study Japanese in university, and then I got a chance to go abroad, and then I kind of got stuck here.
Where did you go for your first trip to Japan?
Well, first I went just as a tourist to Tokyo, but after that, with the help of my university, Stockholm University, I got two opportunities to study abroad. I studied first in Nagoya at the Nanzan University, and then in Tokyo at the Shuugyou University.
So quite different experiences, I imagine, studying Nagoya area, which is kind of like in the middle between the two big ones, Osaka and Tokyo, and also in the center of Tokyo.
Yeah, Nagoya is interesting because it's a big city, but it's, as you say, it's stuck in between cities, and it feels like it doesn't really have its own proper identity in a way. And I asked the people from Nagoya, what's typical Nagoya? And they're like, I don't know.
The Tebasaki chicken wings, right?
Yeah. But I mean, like, for example, Osaka is the funny place, and Tokyo is the strict. It's the main city, so to say. And but Nagoya is kind of it's there, and it's very nice. It's very calm and very relaxing, I think. I liked it.
You said you came a couple of times for your studies, and you somehow ended up stuck here.
Yes.
What was it that kept you coming back and kept you here in Japan?
Well, when I was studying in Chuo University, I wanted to try some kind of club activity, the bukatsu, the school
organized clubs.
School organized clubs, yes, because we don't have anything like that in Sweden, and in Japan it's just crazy with all of these different clubs. The ones where you just study, or like for sports, or then cultural activities, and then there's the clubs which no one knows what they're actually doing. So I thought, hey, I must experience this. This is like the cultural experience you can only get here. So at first I thought I should maybe try acting, actually, because I've acted a bit in Sweden when I was in school, and I liked that. And I thought, hey, this is like the final test of my Japanese skill, if I can act in Japanese. So I looked up the acting club, but then by accident I found the rakugo club. And I was like, rakugo, I kind of heard about it, but it doesn't really ring a bell. So then I looked in the dictionary, and I didn't get anything from that. But
what did the dictionary say?
I can't remember, but it had some kind of explanation, but it was like a non-meaning. I didn't get it at all. It's probably, as they usually say, the art of the fallen words, which is like, okay.
Okay, the words drop on the floor.
Yeah, it's hard to translate, but yeah, I don't think that's it still. But then they had this presentation at the school, and I watched rakugo for the first time, and I didn't get more than like half of it, but I thought it looked interesting, and this is something new, so let's try this.
And so then you kind of applied. Was there any kind of challenge for you to join this club, which is a performing arts club where you have to speak a lot of Japanese as a foreigner with, I don't know what your language ability was at the time, but I imagine it's not the easiest to get into as opposed to a sports club.
Yeah, language-wise, I could, speak normally and take the classes, and but then when it comes to rakugo, it's very old Japanese, and they talk very, very fast. But the club itself, it was very welcoming, and they really wanted more people to join. Of course, at first they probably didn't think I would stick around because they had never had any non-Japanese members of the club before. But they were all very welcoming and kind. And at first you just, watched, and it took a while before you had to perform yourself, of course.
You said that the dictionary definition was pretty vague, like the art of the fallen word. So you went to see for yourself. What was your first impression of rakugo? How did you define it to yourself when you saw it performed the first time?
Well, my first big impression was really, it's really, really fast. There's one person sitting down and just speaking like a machine gun. And watching more and more, I realized, they're playing different roles. So one person is playing all these kind of different roles, and that I thought was very, very fascinating. And especially since I have some experience acting, generally when you act on stage, you can only play one person. But in rakugo, you can play all the characters.
Which is one of the things that make it really unique.
Yeah. And that's really, really fun. And that way you can, differentiate them and have a lot of fun experience in that regard, so to say.
So what was it like once you entered the club and you had these expectations from the existing members that maybe thought you were not going to stay with them for too long, but you got hooked? What was it that you kind of made you stick around there?
Well, part of it was, of course, I'd say half is the art, the experience of performing these old stories, which was really, really, really hard. The Japanese was way, way harder than anything I had studied before. But it was also very rewarding once you really get it to work, and then you get people to laugh, and that feels amazing. But also it was really such a nice group of people, and they were all so kind. And
how do these clubs usually work in Japanese universities? I haven't had that experience myself, so I'm quite curious. Is it just a weekly meetup and you meet in a spare room and practice, or is there really like a bigger organization with like many events?
I think at least this club was very active. They had like maybe 10 shows a year.
Oh wow! Okay.
Or so.
It's nearly one a month.
And it was all very, very organized. So this is the show for the first years, and this is for the second and third, and this is the fourth years before they graduate. They have this big show. And depending on what year you are kind of doing different things. So it's the first years you're just learning, and then second years they have to teach the first years, and then the third years takes care of all the technical stuff and like the economics of the club, and then the fourth years they kind of chill because they have to think about work and stuff, and then also at every lunch break. They had a gathering.
Every lunch break?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And you're supposed to go there, and then they, show you like a little bit about rakugo or something. And this was, it was interesting because it was mandatory. You had to come every time. But if you didn't, then like at the end of the semester, then they would look at everyone's attendance and be like, okay, these people haven't have skipped class too many times. So then they get like the batsugemu, what's that in English?
They get kicked out of the club, so to say, right?
No, not kicked out, but they get a penalty game.
Oh.
So they have to
play the actual game.
No, well, they have to do something embarrassing. So it's
Okay.
like, this is your punishment, and then they kind of like, what was it? Like dress in a woman's dress or
some
something
kind
like
of
that.
hazing.
So, so it was like a bit embarrassing, and then it's like done, and it didn't matter.
It's quite strict for a club that is like on a voluntary basis.
Yeah. But it was kind of like with fun. It wasn't. Oh well, kind of.
So during your university time at Shuugyou University, you get to join this club and you participate, and you do this for a few years, and you get this look into rakugo. What were you actually able to do in terms of your own performance and so on during that time?
Well, in university, I was just, just trying to get the Japanese to come out, just trying to get to the end of the story. So I couldn't really, I was just so focused on trying to do it properly that I couldn't really think about the finer details, because the Japanese was so hard. My head was just spinning, and then sitting in the seiza, the traditional form of sitting, as it's called, just killed my legs.
Cuts the blood off, and
Yeah.
you suddenly trip over when you want to stand up.
No, I couldn't stand up, and some of my first performances, I had to be like carried out because I couldn't get up, and they were like, but they made a fun thing of them, and the audience laughed and all that. So they think it's funny. So, and I think my very first one, I was very nervous, of course, and then my legs were killing me, and I don't remember the end of the performance. All of a sudden, I knew it was done, and I was like, wait, what happened? Did I do it properly? Yeah, you're fine and all. But I don't know if I was really fine.
So you have to be carried off stage because your legs don't function anymore. The Japanese is extremely difficult to learn and hard for you to kind of get to the end of it. And now you're a professional performer.
Yeah.
When was it that you kind of decided, I don't want to just do this in a club, I want to become professional?
Yeah, so after university, since I was studying there for a year, then I went back to Sweden to finish my bachelor degree. And then I thought, hey, what should I do with my life now? I'm supposed to be a grown-up, and
aren't we all?
Yeah, and at this part of my life, I'm supposed to magically have found a calling and a career path, and wife and kids and a dog and a car and all that. But it's like, okay, what do I do with my life? Well, I found this rakugo, which is like something so special, and let's try this. So I decided to go back to Japan, and I performed a bit as an amateur then. But talking to people and listening, I understood that to do rakugo properly, you really need to become a professional, because the rakugo world is very, very traditional, and it's like, if you're to become a professional, you need to find a master and become his apprentice and do many years of training. Otherwise, you're an amateur, and it's like completely different things, and you don't get accepted like that.
So the amateurs will just perform at like local cafes and bars where they host rakugo events, and the professionals, they will kind of become part of this traditional training system and this family system. You mentioned the clans.
Yes.
How do you get into this as a foreigner? I imagine because it's such a traditional thing, and because it's a very Japanese thing, art, there are not so many opportunities for foreigners to enter. What was your path into the world of professional rakugo?
Well, I would say in one way it's kind of the same, because even for Japanese people, you need to get accepted by a master. So it depends on who you're asking. You need to find someone who will not reject you. And I would actually say at this age, in this day and age, it's probably still easier to be a foreigner and doing this than being a woman and doing this, because it's been very old-fashioned, and traditionally it was only men doing rakugo, as with most kind of art forms. And it's only been, I think, 50, 60 years since the first female performer started.
Are there many today?
The numbers are growing. It's maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 or something like that, maybe. I haven't counted, but of course there's a lot fewer. There's only 3 professional non-Japanese people as of this day, as far as I know. It's you need to find a master. That's step 1.
How did you find yours?
Well, I looked around and watched a lot of people perform. Of course, my master is quite famous because he's on TV on the Shoten show, which is aired every Sunday in Japan.
Okay.
But I watched his rakugo and I thought, hey, this man's rakugo is a bit different, and I can feel his kindness through the rakugo. And I thought, that's a very important thing because your master is, really close. It's almost like a father and son in a way, because the master teaches you everything, and if you screw up and get in trouble, then the master will be there to apologize on your behalf. And so I thought, kind of, it was, it felt maybe this man would work.
So you see him on TV, he's a famous person,
Yes.
famous rakugo master. How do you get in touch with such a master? I imagine he is busy, he has already his existing student. How do you find your way to open the door?
Well, I asked people, how do you do this? What is the way? And I was told, write a letter and go and see him on one of his shows, and then, bring him the letter afterwards. So I wrote a letter with, as a hard, proper Japanese as I could, with like the proper kanjis and proper teinego, the most polite way of writing. Then I went to watch him at the rakugo, the Yose Theater, which is a special place for rakugo. And afterwards, I went to the changing room, and Koraku is called. Is Master Koraku here, and I got to meet him and brought him my letter and said, please make me your apprentice. And he was surprised, but he was smiling. And oh, really? Your contact information is in here. Okay, yeah, I'll get back to you because now the show is over, so we got to go drinking. But then he called me a few days later.
Really?
I didn't expect, because I heard a lot of stories. A lot of the time, you kind of have to go over and over, and they will say, no, I don't want any apprentices. No, not me. Get out of here. And then you get rejected over and over and over, and you still have to keep on going. And then after getting rejected like 100 times or more, then it's like, oh, fine. You're still here anyway, so.
You're committed enough.
Yeah.
You're motivated enough to do it that they will take you on.
Yeah.
But he called you after a couple of days and he's like,
Yeah.
hey, okay, let's give this a try.
Yeah, no, he was like, yeah, come over to I've got a rakugo show at this stage, so come on, check, and then I'll talk to you properly afterwards. So then I went and watched him again, and afterwards I talked to him and his wife, and he explained, rakugo it's very traditional, and it's a lot of hard work, and it's not really that flashy or anything. The main part of the job is just practicing for yourself. So if you really want to do this, then you're fine to come here, but think through it properly. But I thought, yeah, I definitely want to do this. So then I called him the next day or so, and then he was like, okay, then come 2 days later, because that is a lucky day. You got the calendars in Japan where you see the lucky days. And then I went to him, and he decided my name for me, and it was very smooth compared to a lot of other stories I've heard.
So your name is Sanyutei Kouseinen.
Yes, this is my current name.
Why did he pick this name? What does it mean?
Well, yeah, generally the master picks the name for the student, and I actually had another name before that. Before that, I was Sanyutei Jubei. And Sanyutei is the family name, Since my master is Sanyutei Kouseinen, and this means the 3 pleasures of life. So this is the way a man would enjoy himself back in the day. Well, the 3 vices, so to say, which is drinking, gambling, and women.
Okay.
So this is like the mitsu no asobi and then sanyutei. It's not very politically correct, but the lower part of my name, the personal name, so to say. When I was just starting out as an apprentice, I first had the name Jube, which is like a samurai name. But apparently the reason of this is because I'm the 10th apprentice, which in Japanese is the Juban and the Jube. And then when I got promoted, because the rakugo is like, you go through different stages. You start at the Zenza, Futatsume, Shinjuji. So I got promoted to Futatsume, which I am now. Then my name was changed to Kouseinen, which translated to English would be roughly nice guy.
Okay. From samurai to nice guy.
Yeah. And the Japanese people think that's very funny. And it's easy to remember. And I think that's the main point my master puts focus on, that, people should be able to remember you properly.
When you are in the West and you go to university, you usually sign up bachelor degree or master's degree, and you have a certain amount of years that you study, and then you have your degree and you're qualified to do ABC. In the case of rakugo, you got this call, you meet him, and he gives you a name. What are you committing to? What did you know what you were getting yourself into?
To an extent, I had done my research and talked to people, and I realized this is going to be pretty tough. But still, it was way more tough than I thought it would be. It's very traditional, and I mean, of course, you learn rakugo, but the main thing you do isn't, practicing rakugo. This is the very old style, traditional way of training. So my main thing is to, I go with my master to his shows, and then I carry his bag for him. And then I go to the rakugo theater, and I bring him tea, and I help him put the kimono on, and then I play the taiko drum when he goes up on stage. And when he's done, I help him undress and fold the kimono, and put it back in his bag, give him tea, and then we go to the next place. This is the main job, so to say.
Must be quite a strange experience. Coming
Yes.
from, you go to university, you graduate, you come here, and suddenly you basically are a servant, so to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. It's the old style of becoming really an apprentice, and of course I get to do rakugo in at the start of the show before my master goes on. I try to warm up the audience, but that's very short. If my master performs half an hour or maybe an hour, and I perform just 15 minutes and try to warm up, and then it's back to helping backstage.
But before you get to do your own performance, even before the master, I assume you have to go through a lot of training. You were talking to me before we started recording about like Shuugyou, so this typical training for rakugo. Can you tell us about this a little bit? What do you learn? How do you learn to perform these?
Yeah, the main way of thinking about this is watch and learn. Even while you're working, you're supposed to listen to the stories and watch the masters, how they're performing, and learn like that. And you learn things, so to say. Well, for one thing, it's the rakugo training. You get taught a story by your master, and my master does the story in front of me, and these days you get to record it. Back in the day you had to try to remember everything like this, but now you can record it, and my master does the story, or other masters as well. I get taught from a lot of different people. They do the story, and I record it and watch all the gestures and things. And then I try to memorize it, and when I've memorized it, I perform it in front of my master, and he gives me pointers, these gestures are wrong, or like, these words are wrong, do it like this instead. And in the the character settings should be different, and all kinds of things. And if it's decent enough, then okay, you can do this in front of an audience, or it'll be memorize it again and come back to me again.
We said earlier that your first definition of rakugo was what you saw in a dictionary, the art of the fallen word. Then you saw it in person. You're like, okay, it's people playing different roles, speaking very fast, traditional Japanese, and sharing those stories. To define it now, because we're going to talk about this a lot more, how do you explain rakugo now to someone who hasn't really heard about this too much, maybe has heard the word, and now you have this expertise and understanding of it?
Yes. Well, of course, it's depending on the person how you would explain it is different, but I would explain it as a comical one-man theater. Some people likes to focus on the comedy. I've heard some people making a joke that this is kind of like stand-up comedy, but you're sitting down, so it's a sit-down comedy, which is funny, but I don't think that really gives a good picture of rakugo, because I think the main part is still the theater. And, most of it is comical. There's also the heart-wrenching stories and the ghost stories where you're supposed to get scared. So it's not all about comedy. And even if you don't laugh, you watch a show with different characters. So I think it's really, it's one person performing different characters and making a story, sometimes quite a complicated story. And then there's also narration, and there's a lot of gestures and mime. And you use the two different tools, the folding fan and the hand towel. And you use these to show a lot of different things, like pens or like swords or
chopsticks.
Chopsticks, and then you pretend you drink sake and all kinds of things. So it's quite advanced, I think, overall.
So it's not just sit-down comedy.
Yeah.
It's a bit of comedy, but it's a lot of storytelling.
Yes.
One person doing all the characters in the story. So to go back to your training, you have to learn all those stories because they're old stories, right? Traditional stories. Is it like a memorization by heart? You have to memorize all the words, obviously, but do they have to be told in a specific way, or are you allowed to tell the story the way you want to, or how does it work?
So because rakugo is it's very traditional, you are not supposed to just read a story in a book and then do it yourself. You have to be taught by someone. So then you get taught, even if it's the same story, you get taught this version of the story from this person. So it's this person's version, and he's learned it from his master and from their master. So it's like passed down, and then the story changes a bit depending on the person. So you can't just do a story like that. So you have to get taught it by someone, and especially regarding this, and also depending on the person. Some people, the same story can be incredibly different depending on who's telling it. But in the beginning of the training, when as I said before, there's 3 grades of rakugo, three levels. So first is the zenza, which is the basic training when you're still not a proper performer, and you're really, I wouldn't say a slave, but you're really doing most of the hard work. And then you go to the futatsume, and then you're done with all the basic training, and then you can just focus on the art. And then you become the Shuugyou when you become the master and can get your own apprentices. So in the beginning, first 4 years, when I was the lowest apprentice, when I was a zenza, then the rule is to perform exactly as you have been told. Don't change the story, and don't do anything odd. Don't try to be funny, so to say. Just do it as you're told. Keep the tradition going. And then when you go up to futatsume, then you're free to change the story how you want, and try something new and change the script and add ad-libs and everything. So at first you're supposed to keep the tradition, and then you can break out of it.
How long does it take you usually, if you learn a new story, to kind of I don't want to say master it, but do it well enough that your master lets you perform it?
Well, it depends very much on the stories, because the stories can be very different. Some stories are just like a few minutes. Most of them are maybe 15, 20 minutes. Then some longer are 30 minutes.
Okay.
And the longest ones are like an hour or maybe more.
That's a lot to memorize.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just some of the shorter normal ones I can do in a week. But the longest one I've learned is like 50 minutes plus, and with a lot of samurai speaking, so a lot of words I've never heard about, and that took me more than a month. And I was really, really tired afterwards.
I can imagine. How many stories? Is there a fixed amount of stories that exist, or are there constantly new ones being added because it's historical? I don't know if there's still modern stories.
Yeah. You're free to make your own stories as well. And some people only do original stories. The traditional ones, there's probably at least 400 or 500, maybe more. But a lot of them have, fallen out of grace because people won't get it anymore. But there's still, a lot of stories still being told.
So going back to your early days of training, what was the most difficult for you once you actually, quote unquote, signed up for that training with your master? Yeah. You were committed, you had to help out. What was the biggest change for you, challenge?
Well, like I said, this part of it is the rakugo. You learn the rakugo, but then there's the whole, as I said, you bring tea to your master, and you have to help. You have to do everything backstage. And when you are at the rakugo, the Yosei theater, as it's called, the special rakugo theater, you have to do that for all the masters. So you have to bring everyone tea when they come. And the rules are very strict. For example, whenever someone arrives, you're supposed to bring them tea. Mm-hmm. But generally, they want tea as soon as possible. But if someone is like doing something, if they're like emailing someone or talking about something, if they're busy, then they don't want the tea now. So you have to wait. Oh no, they're busy now. Let's wait for the perfect timing.
And then the tea gets cold. It's like, oh no, I have to make a new one.
Exactly. Yeah, and the same thing with greeting people. When someone higher in rank than yourself comes, then you're supposed to greet them, which is "Ohayo gozaimasu," which is good morning, no matter what time of day it is. That's the show business kind of way. Okay. It's always morning. But that also depending if they're doing something and they're busy, then you kind of disturb them. So you have to wait. Oh, they look to be not doing anything right now. So then it's like, good morning. How are you? And some really strict masters, you can really see that because the strictest master in my rakugo clan, if he was just relaxing and doing nothing and you did it right, then you would be like, good morning, master, and then he'd be like, oh. But if you screwed up the timing, then he would just ignore you.
So even when you do it well, it's not like particularly welcoming. There's a big gap between being the Sansei of Futatsume and being the master.
Yeah. And then there's also, it takes time before they get to know you. And at the beginning, everyone's like, not just for me, but for all the students, it's like, oh, they might quit after a few weeks, So at the beginning, everyone's like, no need to get attached, sort of thing.
Let's see if he sticks around.
Yeah.
You mentioned masters of your clan. Can you explain this a little bit more? What are Rakugo clans and how many are there?
Depending on, since it's very hierarchical. I can never say this word properly in English.
Yeah, hierarchical.
Something
like that.
Yes.
The native speakers will correct us in the comments.
No. Living and working here in Japan now, I'm just using 70-80% Japanese, and my English is getting worse and worse. So today is good English practice for me, rather. The hierarchy is very, very strong. So it all depends on who is your master and what is your so-called family. So I can track, back like 100 years or more, like my master's master, and then his master's, and then his master, and then in that way you get the
lineage.
Yeah, the lineage and the clan names, so to say. They have a different surnames, so to say. And there's, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 different surnames, so to say. There's like Sanyutei and Katsura and Hayashi, Yanagiya, and so on and so on.
So they're different lineages, different kind of families, not by blood, but by kind of rakugo practice.
Yeah.
Are they different in styles?
A bit. I think less now than before, but traditionally there were more of a specialization. But I'm worried I would screw up the different specializations. But
you mentioned earlier that the reason you chose your master is when you saw him on TV, you felt his rakugo was kind of like warm and friendly, and kind. Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that and how maybe it struck you? What was different about it?
Yeah, because some people are like really, really, really funny, and this is really funny. This is really great art. But my master stories is kind of like, it's funny, of course, but also I can feel there's no prejudice or anything, and it's really, he looks at all the characters in his play. This is from my point of view, of course. I'm not sure how he's thinking, but from my point of view, he looks at all the characters and all their faults, and kind of the way he's portraying it is kind of like, well, we humans all have our faults. We're all imperfect, and that's fine. There's beauty in that as well. Is kind of what I feel from him.
So kind of balance across all the characters and not necessarily making some look worse than others.
Yeah. Even when there's stupid people and people making mistakes in the story, it's with kindness, and it is
How do you, you perform by yourself on stage? How do you portray all those different characters? How do you convey those differences in each of them?
Well, regarding this is there's some different ways of looking at it, and some people think you shouldn't overact so much. You can try, like when you're a woman, you make your voice all squeaky and you try to become as feminine as possible, or if you're a child and you try to sound very, very. There's a balance to it to not make it into a comic. But generally, at least the way I've been taught is to feel it and try to act it. And when you're a woman, the big part is, of course, the gestures, which helps a lot. So if you're a man, you're
sit up straight.
You sit up straight, and you're a man. But if you're a woman, you put your hands together and you put your hands like this, one over the other, and then you try to look as feminine as possible, and you change your voice a little bit like this, and you touch your kimono like this. This is a very female way, and generally overall you try to be more feminine.
In the traditional way of how it used to be portrayed.
The traditional Japanese woman, Yamato no Desu. Some people think you shouldn't overdo it, and some people are like, go ahead and overdo it and overact and really make it as funny as possible. So that depends on the people. But I try to strive against realism, I would say.
You said there's around 400 or 500 traditional stories around that kind of stayed from the past. What are the typical topics of those stories, and how are those that were written a few hundred years ago still relevant today and making people laugh today?
Yeah, I think because they've survived these hundreds of years, they are very global, universal themes. So in that regard, I think rakugo is very easy to understand, even for people not from Japan, because there's a lot of human emotions, and there's jealousy, and it's greed, and stories about people who are stupid and people who are know-it-alls and then make a fool of themselves. A lot of stories about people trying to mimic something and make a fool of themselves. And then also there's stories between a man and a husband, and a man and a
Husband
woman,
and wife,
husband and wife. Yes, they weren't that progressive in rakugo stories. Yeah, husband and wife, and then children who are not doing as they're told. So I think it's very universal themes. Of course, there's some cultural things, especially when there's stories with samurai, where you just kind of had to, you just had to go with the flow and try to not get your head cut off, which could happen if you did say the wrong thing. But overall, I think it's very easy to understand.
Is that also what allowed you to then actually export rakugo, so to say? You went to perform in Swedish and in English outside of Japan. Is this the nature of the jokes what makes them possible worldwide?
I think so, yeah. Of course, there's part of it is, depending on the audience. Some part of the audience would be like, rather, we want to see the typical Japanese and, the exotic style, so to say. But I think it's very easy to understand, and a lot of the jokes are like, this could be written in English as well. And of course, they also import a lot of jokes and a lot of stories and legends and stuff. For example, there's a famous story about the Reaper of Death, which I think is from a German stories or Italian or a mix of stories.
Which was brought to Japan back then and turned into a rakugo story.
Yeah, and then back in the day they didn't have copyright or anything like that, so they was just like, oh, this is funny, I'm going to do this, and then. Overall, that's something Japanese people are very good at from a Swedish point of view. Whenever they import something, just leave a few years and they'll be like, no, this is the Japanese version. Like say the noodles, ramen was originally Chinese, but this is the Japanese ramen. It's completely different, and you got the
you might offend a few people now.
maybe we cut this. Let's think about it. Like you got the curry. This is Japanese curry. It's this is something we'd never do in Sweden. But where was I going with this?
About the performing and bringing the stories back to Japan. And kind of the topic.
Back in the day, since they didn't have any copyright, they were like, just, oh, this is funny, let's do this. And then a few hundred years later, then it's like, no, this is the traditional Japanese story. But yeah, in that regard, as long as it's funny, and the big thing about rakugo was it was the commoners' entertainment. It was made by common people for common people. So there was a lot of laughter, a lot of making fun of the people in power, and the samurais and so on, and the rich people. And that definitely stands out compared to, say, like kabuki or everything like that, which is just the samurai and the honorary samurai, and it's completely different from the normal people.
Did they kind of start at the same period, all these different theater and art forms, and kind of?
No, rakugo is fairly new. It's only like 300-400 years old. So it started in the Edo period, while something like No is like maybe 1,000 years. I have to look it up. So yeah. So back in the day, it was like, no highbrow or anything like that at all. It was just the common people having a laugh.
When was it that you were first allowed then to perform before you mastered, to warm up the audience? I imagine they don't do this right away. They want to.
Oh, it was like a month or so after.
Really?
Yeah.
That's unexpected.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing as well, because the zenza, the lowest form of printers, they are, you don't expect anything from them. They're still learning. They're not a proper performer yet. So, and when you go to the Yosei Rakugo Theater, the zenza appear in the very beginning, before the show has actually started. So at the Yosei Theater I perform at, it starts at 6 o'clock, but 15 minutes before that, so 5:45, the zenza goes on stage, before it's actually, so in a way, the zenza's performance, this is not part of the ticket price. So
you get that one for free.
Yeah. So no one expects anything of them, and thus rather you can make more mistakes because you have less pressure. And
do you remember your first time you performed before your master and kind of went on that stage at the Yosei?
Yeah. My master is very kind and very warm and he always wants the mood to be fun and joking around all of the time. But when he taught me a story, he was very strict and giving me pointers for everything and no, that's wrong. Not like that, like this, and you do it again. But then when I perform in front of an audience, especially in the beginning, it's all like, yeah, good job. It's like at the beginning, it's just good job getting to the end of the story, even if I screwed up parts of it, and even if I took way too long, which is generally very very important when you perform in the theaters. You have to keep the time limit strict. Because otherwise the next person has to make their story shorter, and generally the lowest in rank starts first. So then you have to apologize and make a fool of yourself.
Do you have a timer in front of you where you can see how long you've been speaking?
Yeah. Generally, there's a watch somewhere you can watch.
Rakugo, you said earlier, is performed in two parts. You have the comic part at the beginning and then the storytelling. What do you do in the comic part, which is not the stories you really learn and share, but you just make a stand-up skit by yourself?
Yeah, kind of. You got the main part, and then the first part is called the makura in Japanese, which would be something like pillow. I can't really remember why it's called that. I just gotten used to it. I've checked it up sometime in the past. But this is the way to kind of ease the audience into the story.
Make them comfortable, maybe?
Yeah. So at first you introduce yourself and then talk about something funny overall, and then you generally try to make some funny stories about the theme of the story, but something unrelated. So for example, if the story is about children, for example, if there's a lot of story about children who are
not behaving.
Yeah, not behaving, and a lot of smart children who are smarter than the fathers. So that's the comedy there. And then you talk about kids or something like that, or school or something, and then you kind of ease into the theme of the story, and then you go into the classical story. But this is of course different if you're performing in the traditional Yosei theaters, where there's like a lot of people performing, like 10 people in a row, which they do like every day, all year round.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
Yes, and then if you appear in the middle there, the audience is already warmed up and they already gotten used to rakugo. Then you don't have to talk so much about like that, and you can just quickly go into the story, and they will. So it really depends on the place and the audience, and when you feel like they're warmed up a bit and they feel like they can relax and laugh, and then you can go into the story and.
So in a way, even though you go the first one on stage and nobody expects anything from you, it is kind of the most difficult because the audience is still cold. They don't know what they're going to get that evening. Can you tell when you sit in Seiza and you look at the audience in front of you, are they an easy audience? Are they going to be hard to make laugh? Can you tell instantly or pretty fast? Or is it something that...
Yeah, little by little, you kind of... at first the general, when you go up, if there's a lot of... if they clap your hands at all, and if they look attentive or not, and then the reaction. So if they laugh at, for example, I analyze and like, they laughed at this, but they didn't laugh at that. Should I do another kind of? Should I do an easy to understand story today? Or sometimes it's like, these people have watched a lot of rakugo, so they know all of the normal typical stories. So I should do something a bit rarer. And they will be happy with that, and kind of like, and then especially if it's the end of the show, later part, then these people are tired now. Let's finish it quickly, or like they don't want to laugh. They want to hear a story. So maybe I do like an emotional story instead, or something like that, and you kind of try to get a feel of the audience.
You said there's only 3 foreigners that are professional rakugo performers.
Yes.
Yourself, Katsura Sunshine, whom we've talked to,
yes.
and one more.
Yeah.
Do you ever notice any different reaction when a foreigner comes on stage and you go there and maybe people are a bit skeptical, like, oh, is he going to do traditional rakugo now? Who is this person?
Yeah, definitely. Because, as you probably know, if living in Japan as a non-Japanese person, you are not expected to know any Japanese at all. Especially me coming all in kimono and everything, they're like, oh, what's going on here? And I really need to, more than other people, I really need to make sure to introduce myself properly and, tell them, I come from Sweden, but I'm doing rakugo. I generally make a joke of that I was interested in Japan and I thought, hey, I wanted to work in Japan and, I really wanted a proper job with a stable income. And then they all laugh because,
you're a rakugo performer. Right?
Yeah. Trying to first ease them into the idea, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm doing it in Japanese. I mean, sometimes I perform in English as well, but the majority of my rakugo is in Japanese. I need to, first prove to them that I can speak Japanese and, get them, when I get them to, okay, we can listen to this, and then they not forget, but they get into the mindset of listening to it properly. But
then you're just the storyteller and not a foreigner.
Yeah.
Storyteller.
Yeah, so rather that's an interesting thing that one of my senior performers said that, rakugo is different from a lot of other art forms. For example, a musician, they want everyone to look at you. They want, this is the star. Look at the star. Like, boom. But in rakugo, if you do it good, then you forget the storyteller. The storyteller becomes invisible and you just see the characters. And then you get so into the story, you kind of see them. Like some people who with a really good imagination, they say like, oh, all of a sudden, just sake appears in your hands and like the noodles just appear out of thin air. And then when the story is done, you return and like, oh, I was watching rakugo, and you kind of just, hallucinated, so to say, to the story.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because you start to imagine those things, but you're watching a live performance. So it's not like you're reading a book and you're imagining how things look like. You're seeing someone perform, but also that person kind of disappears behind a... I would have to go to see a show for myself.
Yeah.
Do you notice a big difference between like a Japanese audience and a foreign audience when you perform overseas or in English or in Swedish, and what people laugh to, what people react to?
A bit of a difference, yeah. Because, for one, in Japan, actually, there's a lot of people, especially young people in Japan, who have never seen rakugo. They know about it, and it's like, yeah, it's that thing, right? With the kimono.
There's many things with kimono in Japan.
Yeah. So varying degrees. Some will like, yeah, I've seen it once, maybe. Yeah, and it's like the old guy talking, right? Mm-hmm. And then some people are like, yeah, I've seen it, and then they have like no idea. But still, it's a lot of people have seen it. But when I perform in the West, it's a bit of different. It's very fresh. Especially some of the stories which are classics in Japan, but everyone knows about them. It's one of the famous ones is the Shuugyou, which is the story of a boy with a really, really long name.
That's the one that Katsura Sunshine performed on the podcast a little bit. That was a good one, and it works across cultures, right?
Yeah. It's very simple and very, very effective. But in Japan, a lot of people know about this one, so it's kind of like, yeah, we know it. But if I do it in the West, it's very fresh and like, I really, the answer is just think of a nickname, but you don't do that, and you do the whole thing. And then also, especially when I was performing in France, and I really felt compared to the other countries, they were really like in Japan, they look at they look at it normally, but a lot of people are ready to laugh, and then some people are like can you make me laugh? But in France, they were really like glued to their seats and like, oh, this is like art, and it was really a different vibe.
Do you need to give more context? Explain what they're about to listen and where this comes from, so that people kind of understand the origin of the stories, maybe especially when there's a historical context like samurai stories? Yeah.
Overall, I always try to introduce, this is a one-man story. So you look in one direction, you're one character, and then you look in another direction, you're another character, and then you have a conversation with yourself. And then showing, as I said, the different, like you have your normal male characters, and you got your female characters, and then you have your children, and you got your samurai, and then you got the different props. So you can make it into a pen or a sword or like a pipe, and showing all kinds of different gestures like this, and then ease them into the stories with short stories, and then longer and longer. But some stories, you definitely need the cultural background. So for example, one story which I performed in English, which got a lot of laughs, probably more than in Japan, is a story called Matsuyama Kagami, the mirror of Matsuyama. So this story is about a man living in the countryside of old Japan, and they had never heard about a mirror. So no one knew what a mirror was. And this man was like really, it was a really good man, and he was going to his father's grave and praying every day for like 30 years or so. And they were like, oh, this is great. So the government was giving him a gift because of as a sign of his filial piety. So they asked, what do you want? And he said, I don't want any earthly things. I just want to see my dead father again. And they've already promised they have to give him something, whatever he wants. But then they realize, hey, he's never seen a mirror, and he looks just like his father. So then they put a mirror in a box and give it to him and ask him, look inside. And he looks inside and sees his own reflection, and he's like, oh, father, so this is where you were. Oh, I've been so longing to see you. And he started crying in joy. And then he realized, oh, but father, you kind of look younger than last time I saw you. And he's all happy and all, but he's told to never show this to anyone. But then his wife finds this, and she wonders what he's doing, and she opens it, and oh, he's keeping a mistress in here. And she gets all angry and everything, and they go into a fight. But then a Buddhist monk comes and stops the fight, and oh, okay, I'll have a look at this. I'll take care of this. And then he looks inside, and he says, oh, don't worry about this. The mistress inside, she was so distressed, causing all this commotion, that she cut off all her hair to apologize. And this is, the Japanese thing of when you make a mistake, to show that you cut off all your hair, is like an old tradition. But the monk, of course, was just bold, so he saw his own expression. And I thought, to make this easy to understand, I made sure to explain before about the tradition in Japan of cutting off all your hair. You can still see today, even in the rakugo training, if you like make a big mistake, you have to apologize. It's very, very strict, so you always have to apologize and bow, and even if it's not your fault, even if it's someone else, you never say it's not me. You just like, why did you do this? And this is not me, but I'm like, okay, yeah, sorry. And if you did a really big mistake, you cut off your hair, and the next day, and they see like. So I explained, stories about that, and like, then I think it's easier to go to the punchline.
So that kind of story resonated very well with an English audience.
Yes.
Maybe less so in Japan. And you said that usually when you kind of, before going on stage, you look at the audience, you look at how the people that performed before you are doing, what the audience is reacting to, and you adjust the story you pick for that evening. Yes. What are the stories you really like telling?
Well, there's a lot of different stories. I'm learning new stories all the time, and currently I've learned maybe 80 stories or so. Most people, when they're done, so to say, when they're old masters, you learn maybe 200, 300 stories. So I always, have to learn more and more. I like all kinds of stories, the stupid ones, and also the more emotional ones. And right now I'm learning a ghost story, a very famous story called Botandoro, the Peony Lantern in English. It's very famous. It's one of the 3 the 3 greatest ghost stories of Japan.
Oh.
And it was written in the Meiji period by Sanyutei Kouseinen. And it's like a really...
So one of your ancestors?
Yeah, so to say. Not by blood, but by rakugo. Yeah.
By rakugo.
So like my master, something like that. And it's like a really long story. You can't do it all in one sitting. It's maybe 18 parts, I think. If you do it all in one sitting, it would be maybe at least 10 hours.
Oh, wow.
And no audience would want to go through that.
So you're learning these 10 hours?
Yeah, little by little. So every month, since last year, every month I'm learning part of the story. This is a little bit different from the typical rakugo story. Is like it starts and then laughter, hilarity ensues, and then at the end it just abruptly ends, and then it's like with just a punchline, and then it ends, and then it's like, okay, that's that. And if anyone asks what happens after, it's like, I don't know, the story's done. Forget about it. My job
is done, yeah. I'm out.
Yeah, but rather this was by intent to make people come back the next day or like next week. So to see the continuation, you have to come again tomorrow. So then you tell a little bit each day and build up a story. So at first it's a kind of romantic. The 2 lovers meet. But then one of them dies, and even in death, they come back as a ghost and haunts them. But it's a really complicated story, and it's really long. But it's really, really fun to do.
A lot of these stories are historical. You mentioned some people are writing their own original stories. How is rakugo changing today? Is it not modernizing, but is it kind of adapting the stories to the society today to kind of play on this and kind of bring the current events into the stories, or is it more or less staying with the traditions a little bit more than other arts?
The fun thing is that originally, back in the Edo period, rakugo was just, hey, I heard a funny story the other day. And then you tell that in the Edo dialect, which is what they spoke then. And all the people were like common people you would know back in your neighborhood. And it was very, do whatever you want kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But now that has become stylized. So now you're supposed to keep the setting in the Edo period. And the people appearing are the people of Edo, which are characterized of having a short temper, getting into fights all the time, and but also being very strict with justice. You kind of have to keep the spirit of Edo, the wind of Edo, as they say in Japanese. You should feel the wind of Edo blowing. Of course, some people ignore that and just do their thing. But generally it's quite stylized.
Stylized in this sense. Being from Edo, but Osaka being the city known for comedy and also the origin of manzai and so on, are there distinct styles between Tokyo rakugo and Osaka rakugo?
Since I'm part of the Tokyo school, the Edo rakugo, that's quite different from the Osaka school, which is the kamigata rakugo. Traditionally, Osaka was first, apparently, but then people brought it to Edo, which was Tokyo was called back then, and then they kind of evolved into their own things. And the interesting thing is that the general history of rakugo, that in Osaka, traditionally it was done outside at like a busy street. And so you needed to get people's attention. And thus you have, unlike in Edo rakugo, where you just sit down on the zabuton, on the big pillow. In kamigata rakugo in Osaka, you have this little desk here. And then you slap the desk. You make a lot of noise, and then it's like, come on, everyone, come here, come listen. I've got something funny to tell, and you kind of like, I'm funny. Come on. But meanwhile, in Edo, in Tokyo, from the very beginning, it was all done indoors. So the audience, they had nowhere to run, so to say, and they were there to listen. So and thus, especially I can see in my rakugo clan. And my master, he always starts to speak very, very softly. and very slowly and softly, and well, thank you for coming here. And then he, picks up the pace, and then the volume gets louder, and his art gets bigger as well. Generally, Osaka rakugo is seen as a little bit more bigger and a little bit more gaudy.
Louder,
yes. Of course, as in is with probably most countries, the people of Tokyo and Osaka don't like each other very much. It's the same in Sweden with the biggest cities, Stockholm and Göteborg, Gothenburg and Stockholm. So there's that as well.
You're now in second position. You've learned 80 stories. What does it take for you to become a master?
That depends on the different clans, and it's not just the rakugo clans. There's the different rakugo, foundations, you should say, the kyokai. In Osaka, they have like one big rakugo kyokai, Osaka rakugo kyokai, Kamigata rakugo kyokai, the big rakugo foundation. But in Tokyo, there's 4 different ones. I'm part of one of them, which is the 5th Enraku's rakugo clan, the Godaime Enraku Ichimonkai. And depending on what part you are, who's your master and whatever, it all depends on what the conditions are for you to become a master. But generally, it's how many years you've been doing this. Some of them will be like, no, you're still not funny enough. While some of them are like, well, you when you become a master, that's the start of your journey. Up until that, it's the basic training, but after that, you really decide what you should do. And generally from the start, as I said, the lowest part of being an apprentice, the zenza, even then, it doesn't matter if you're funny or not, you still get to perform. And when someone teaches you a story, they might probably be thinking, oh, this is horrible. But you need to do it in front of an audience, because that's when you really, really learn. So, you learn while performing. Of course, that's, the hard. As I'm in the second stage now, since people pay money to come and watch my shows, so I need to give them the proper quality, but I also need somewhere to try out my new stories. So, try to find a balance and try to practice good enough so I can, do my new stories as well.
So there's no official path to becoming a master. It's depending on which association you're part of, depending on your clan, depending on your master's judgment of where you are right now. How do you feel like on this journey? You've been doing this for a few years now. You kind of came to Japan as a student, discovered rakugo, and since then have had a proper job doing this for full time. What do you want to do now next with this art form?
For starters, my first goal has always been to, I really feel I need to prove myself. I need to show that, even if I'm not Japanese and I'm not a native Japanese speaker, I want to prove that I can do this properly, with as good Japanese as I can, and, to make the audience feel like, hey, this is not just a funny foreigner doing a funny impression of Japanese people. This is proper rakugo. If that is possible, it's another. From some people, I think some people are very positive and they say, this is normal. Oh, I forget you're a foreigner. I just think of it as rakugo. Of course, you could, if this was, just a very kind way of, if they really meant it or not, I don't know. I hope so. But then some people would be like, you look foreign. You don't look as a person from Edo. So I can't imagine that. So that depends on the people. But yeah, my first goal is to prove myself that I can do this properly. I'm doing this with all my heart. And then after that, I will try to find my own style of rakugo, which only a Swedish person could do, so to say. And then I want to spread rakugo to the world, because I really think, not just as, since this is what I do, but I really think it definitely is universal, and it definitely would be popular all over the world. So I think there's definitely a lot of potential there. So I want to spread it to the world. But then of course there's the question, should I keep it all to the traditions and do it in kimono on the stage, or should I do it, should I localize it?
Is there room for modernization in this art, or is it not so well perceived to kind of make changes like that?
There's definitely the potential for it. I mean, the kimono is not necessarily important, especially if you do. Some people do stories which are set in a modern age, then you could just as well have a suit on or whatever. And since it's imagination anyway, you don't really need the kimono. But of course, the kimono it helps a lot. And for one, you feel the old Edo period, and kimonos are pretty as well, and I think it helps a lot. But you could definitely do it. But of course, some people would be like, don't ruin rakugo, don't change it too much.
Especially as a foreigner, this might be sometimes of a tricky subject.
Yeah. I think I would probably there's more risk of me changing it than not.
If someone listening to this is interested in rakugo and maybe also wants to learn and so on, where can they get started with this?
Like I said before, it's rakugo is very, very strict. So if you just want to do it like for fun, that's one thing. But if you, for some reason, want to do this like as your job, if you want to be professional, then you really need to go through find your master and do this properly, because it's very. But of course, if you just do it for your own thing, then that's fine. In that regard, either asking someone to teach you or just
joining a club at the university if they are.
Now, that's also interesting since this is very strict. The whole, either you're a professional or you're like an amateur. It's kind of a little bit of an old thinking in Japan as well, because a lot of the other traditional, like for example manzai comedy, these days you don't have to find a master. So some do, of course. Some go through a similar training there, but it's become a lot more free. And some Japanese people are like, "Oh, really? You have to do all that? You have to serve them tea and everything like that? And don't you just do the stories?" And of course, you can see it as that, but also, the training actually has a lot of meaning, I think, after doing it. And, it helps a lot, even in your art and things like that. And you're really learning not just the art, you're also learning to be a rakugo performer, to live as a rakugo performer. It's also what you're kind of taught. But, the traditions are still strong. It's really fascinating in a way, because a lot of people who do this just for fun, who are like, they maybe were in a rakugo club, or they just found rakugo and they're like, hey, I like this, but I don't want to do this as my job. And a lot of them are, taking pride of and being very clear. I'm a amateur rakugo performer, or like as they say, shakaijin. Which is in English
like person of society, member of society.
So it's like rather, because the rakugo performers and all kind of performers are not a proper member of society, so to say. Is the all kind of
you're in this little cocoon.
So they kind of had their community and their rules, so to say. But if you just want to try it, then go ahead and try it. But it's. No matter what you think of this tradition of the master and apprentice, and if you feel that's old-fashioned or not, it's still important to know that this is how it works and how it's viewed, and it's very traditional like that.
You mentioned wanting to have more people interested in rakugo, more people know about it, and you're currently working, I believe, with NHK on making a mini documentary, so to say. Can you tell me about this a little bit?
Yes. I've had the opportunity to work with NHK World on a show called My Job in Japan. I did the first part. First, we did one show about that in like 2 years ago, and then just recently it had a premiere. You can watch it online on NHK World, which is talking about was my job in Japan. So it's about all kind of different non-Japanese people who are performing, not performing, just working all kind of jobs in Japan. Or a lot of odd jobs. Of course, I'm the one with the most odd jobs. So I'm doing the narration and the emceeing for this show.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So hopefully more people will kind of also discover you and your work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Sanyutei Kouseinen, for coming and sharing your insights into rakugo, your perspectives and your apprenticeship in your clan. And thank you everyone for listening and watching to this week's episode of Unpacking Japan. But before we wrap up this time around, we'll have a little performance, a rakugo performance to close up.
Yes. Thank you.
I'll leave it to you.
Yes. Okay. I will just do a very short part of the stories I usually do. First, I thought I should just show a little bit of how rakugo works. So the stories range from the very short ones to the very long ones. So first are the really, really short ones. For example, one of the first stories I was taught is about people who can't read or write. I'll do this story first in Japanese and then in English. 昔は字の読めない書けないという人がたくさんいまして、お前そこで何やってんだ？俺今ね、兄貴に手紙書いてんだ。そうか。よしなよお前字なんさ書けねえだろ？いいんだよ。兄貴も読めねえんだから。Same story in English. Back in the day, there were a lot of people who couldn't write nor read. Hey you! What are you doing? Oh me? I'm writing a letter to my older brother. Oh, I see. Wait a moment. You can't write, can you? That's fine. My brother can't read. So this is kind of how rakugo works. Another story. This story is about robbers. A really, really fast man was chasing after a robber. 泥棒の話なんていうのがたくさんございまして、ごく足の速い人が泥棒を追っかけたなんてな話がありまして、おいお前どこにだ？今ね、泥棒追っかけてるよ。泥棒追っかけてる？いや、だっておめえ、町内で一番足速いじゃねえか。泥棒どこだ？後から来るよ。This time, let's do this story in my native tongue, in Swedish. Det var en gång en riktigt snabb man som jagade efter en tjuv. Hörru du! Vänta du! Vad gör du? Ja, jag håller på att jaga efter en tjuv, förstår du. Jagar du en tjuv? Men du är ju snabbast i stan. Var är tjuven? Ja, han kommer här efter mig. So this is how rakugo becomes when I translate it into Swedish. To wrap it all up, I want to do a very, very short version of a classical Japanese story called Tarachine. This is a story which is very hard to translate into English. It's a story about a man who is asked to marry a woman. She's very, very beautiful and young and everything is perfect, but she speaks very ancient and very hard to understand Japanese. So he can't understand what she's saying. So I'll show you just a very, very short version of this. Generally, the full version of this story is about 25 minutes, but I will shorten it down to just a few minutes. どうぞ、タラチネということでございますけれども、縁はいなもの、さて味なもの、うどが刺身の妻になるなんての話でございまして、あっさん。私はこういうと言ったらすぐに来なくちゃいけねえじゃねえかい。どうも、おやさんすいませんね。いやね、何でしょうかね。お前はね、年はもう36だろ？そろそろ嫁さんもらったら、いいじゃないかな。嫁さん？いや、しもね、もう嫁さんもらいてえと思ったんですけどね。今、貧乏でしょうがねえんですからね。そこで、嫁さんでも来た人にはね、人間の日干しができちゃうんですからね。足のところに来るような、そんな、おかみさんなんてそんな女なんているんですかね。まあお前が持ちたい定期があるんだったら世話してやろうじゃないか。まあこれはね、年は20歳でね、キリは大変によろしいって、いいところから来てるもんだけれども、ちょっとね、 この女の人はね、ちょっと問題っていうかね、言葉が大変に丁寧って言うんで、なかなか困っちゃうんだけど。なんそうです。ちょっとおかしいじゃないですかね。言葉が丁寧ってのはいいじゃないですかね。いつも親さんね、ハチ公お前は言葉が乱暴でいけねえってんでね、言葉が丁寧でいいじゃないか。いやね、その丁寧ではね、その丁寧という言葉の上にな、バカってのがつくんだよ。バカ丁寧。なるほどね。でも面白いじゃないですかね。その女が丁寧で足が乱暴で面白いじゃないですかね。かけ回すやらね。いい天ぷらできますよ。片栗粉じゃないよ。じゃあね。夕方になったらね。嫁さん世話してあげるからね。それまでね。うちをきれいにしなくちゃいけないね。わかりました。じゃあ親さんね。夕方になったら待ってますよ。お願いしますよ。ってんで、夕方になりますと、さあ、こっち来なさいよ。ちょっと今から紹介するからね。ちょっと8個。親さん。追いつきなさいよ。ちゃんと連れてきたよ。ね。いい女だろ。二人でね。仲良くやってくださいよ。まあ、若い二人の間にいるな。これはやぶだからね。私はこれでね。高砂、親さん。ひどいじゃないか、何も荷物じゃねえんだからね。どうも。私八五郎といって、雑貨ゲネーニングでございますけどね。今後、今日で同様の付き合いをお願いします。で、親さんね、あなたの名前言わずに消えちまったんですけど、あなた、名前なんつうの？はい。自らことの生命と説いたもや。大家さん生命ってのが大家さんの名前なんですよ。あなたの名前聞いてんですよ。はい。自らことの生命は、父は元京の山にして生は安堵なわけぞ。あざなお五行と申せしが、我が母33歳の折あるよ誕生夢見。わらわをはらめるがゆえ、たらちねの体内をいねすときは、つるじょと申せしが、それは幼名。成長の後これを改め、千代女と申し、はべるなり。はべったねよ。それ一人の名前なんですか？他の誰かの名前書いてんじゃないの？すっごいね。ほら、覚えられねえからね。ちょっとこれ紙に消してくれ。すごいね。切りゃいいからでもね。もう書けました。ありがとうございます。なかなか綺麗な字ですね。花自らことの生命は、父は元京の山にして、生は安堵なわけぞ。あざなお五行と申せしが、我が母33歳の折あるよ誕生夢見。わらわわらめるがゆえたらちねの体内をいでしとげはつるじょと申せしが、それは幼名。成長の後頃を改め、千代女と申し、あべるなり。ちん。お証拠なっちゃったよ。なげえなめだな、これ。庭園なんだね。隣の竹のところはね。ほら簡単だよ。あらね、神さんのものをおよしてんだよ。およし。今から言うからね、ちょっと手拭い取ってくれってこれいいんだよ。こっちはそう安直いけねえね。今書いたよ。自らことの生命は、父は元京の山にして生は安堵なわけぞ。あだ名を五行と申せしが、ほらもう言うなんてな。抜けちゃうよ。言うだったらいいよ。これでも火事になったら庭園なんだよ。じゃん繁殖がなってるぞい。自らことの生命はと焼け死んじゃうよ。たらちねという一席でございます。Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.